There's a lot about the Moto X that's just the same as it was 4 months ago. For one, the price hasn't come down. It still ranges from $399 to $525, depending on what features and materials you choose, and the array of color and finish combinations is still broader than anything the competition's offering. The specs are still competitive, the screen size is still on the high side, and the 74-minute charge time from empty to full is still awesome. Now, in some ways, the hardware aesthetic has come to feel a little dated. With newer phones still chasing distinctions like thinnest and sleekest, the Moto X is more than ever a chunky meatball of a phone. But I really like it, and I hope that Lenovo continues this design direction. The Moto X rests very well in a palm. It's easy to hold when you're on a call. It looks different without trying too hard. It just feels great. And if you want to go super fancy with it, there are leather and wood options, and even some custom trims from designer Jonathan Adler. Given those choices, does the world really need another super slim, all-metal phone with chamfered edges? If you opt for the more conservative silicone backing option, the news is good. It holds up well to constant use. This particular unit has been my daily driver since September, and despite that, the ribbed rubber backing is almost like new. The phone's interior waterproofing has also fared well, even though I use the phone as a Spotify boombox when dishwashing. The speakers are still louder than any other phone I've used recently. The Pure Edition has benefited from some software bumps too. It got Android 6.0 a little later than we were expecting, but still ahead of most phones. Despite early fears that the update would somehow neuter the Moto software suite, it didn't. The phone can still do all the fancy stuff it could before, except Android has just weaved in some features that Motorola pioneered. The update also fixed some problems with the previous Lollipop build. The phone tends to run a little cooler now on the Snapdragon 808, and the performance lag when shooting 4K video is much less severe. Speaking of the camera, that front-facing flash has come in handy more often than I ever would have expected. It still doesn't work with Snapchat, but that's not the phone's fault. From outdoor selfies at night to group shots and mood lighting, that little LED has won me over. As for the primary camera, it's just as reliable in daylight and just as mediocre in low light. It's just as slow scanning business cards and barcodes, but the fact that it does so automatically is still just as impressive. In short, the camera's upsides still outweigh its negatives, just as we said 4 months ago. Elsewhere, the phone has aged inconsistently. Marshmallow may have helped a little with the phone's battery life, but it still doesn't last as long as it should with its large power pack. It also hasn't made the phone as smooth or as snappy as, say, the Nexus 6P, though admittedly I didn't do a factory wipe and reset with the update, which might have helped both issues. Also, 4 months comparing this screen with the competition only reinforces my belief that Motorola should have stuck with AMOLED. Active display just isn't the same on LCD, and colors sometimes seem muted on this panel. One thing actually surprised me though. Given how common fingerprint scanners have become, I expected to chafe at the lack of one here, but I didn't mind because I use my smartwatch as a trusted device. Your mileage may vary. How well the Moto X Pure Edition has aged has a lot to do with developments beyond the device itself. Motorola's reputation for long-term support has suffered with the announcement that US carrier versions of last year's Moto X won't get a Marshmallow update. While the newer Moto X should fare far better given its unlocked nature, that's still concerning. Also, the past few months have brought us some tough competition for your dollar. The excellent Nexus 6P is just $100 more than the Moto X, while the beautiful OnePlus X comes in $150 cheaper, albeit with some big sacrifices. The Nexus 5X doesn't look or feel as good as either of those, but at $299, it will certainly factor into your buying decision. Android phones are only getting more affordable, I guess is the point, making it harder for the Moto X to stand out. But for now, my buy recommendation for the Moto X stands. In fact, I bought one for a family member this past Christmas. No other Android gives you such a well-balanced feature set offered in so many hardware trims for such a competitive price. And no other Android feels quite like a Moto. The Moto X Pure Edition is still a big deal.